My name is Jason, and this is Just Watches. Okay, today we have a very hot new release from Timex. This is their Q Timex GMT. So they've taken their smash hit Q Timex from a few years ago and given it a real GMT hand. These sold out almost immediately, but I was lucky enough to get one of the first batch. Now, Timex is going to continuously be putting these out, so make sure you don't pay over retail for one of these. They will be available. Before we get to the review, if you're enjoying the contents of this channel, I invite you to subscribe, and if you're enjoying the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much. For price and availability, well, like I said at the time of this recording, this watch is sold out, but much like their Q Timex from a few years ago, I suspect that not only will these two colorways become readily available over time, but they're going to add a whole bunch of other colorways as well. The MSRP of this watch is $219. There is also a black version on a strap that's only $199. Starting with the case, it's 38mm in diameter, 44mm lug to lug. It's 12mm thick, but I would say about 1.5 millimeters of that is this domed acrylic crystal, and then it has an 18mm lug width opening. Now sized up for my 6 3/4 inch wrist, it weighs in at 99 grams. I think this is the exact same case as the Q Timex 38mm. The top of the tonneau style case is high polish with a very small chamfer that transitions into high polish sides. The hooded lugs are nicely finished with horizontal brushing. The sides of the lugs extend down to accommodate the end links of the bracelet. The case is dead flat, but the very short 44mm lug to lug means it's going to wear comfortably on a wide variety of wrist sizes. This bracelet is an update from the original. The first link flares out to 22mm to line up with the edge of the case before tapering all the way back down to 18mm at the clasp. The articulation of the bracelet along the back of the watch is excellent, and the articulation between the links is good. This in combination with the small size of the links makes this watch wear very comfortably on this bracelet. The links are mostly brushed along the top with 2 high polish sections between each link. The sides of the links are also high polish. The finishing on the links is quite good, but the weak point on this bracelet is the clasp. The double push to point is nicely signed with Timex, but the clasp is extremely thin pressed metal and makes the bracelet feel sort of cheap overall. That being said, the bracelet is quite comfortable, and despite the lack of micro positions, I think the links are small enough that most people will be able to get a good fit. The bracelet has a quick release system if you do want to switch out the strap. Finally, sizing is accomplished with split pins. The screwed down caseback helps provide 50 meters of water resistance and has Timex's classic battery hatch, so when the time comes to change the battery, you can do so quickly and easily. This watch is powered by the Ronda 505.24. This is a quartz GMT. In the first position, you can move the GMT hand in one direction and change the date in the other. In the second position, you can hack the watch and move the hour, minute, and GMT hand simultaneously. This means if you don't want to reset the time on all of the hands while traveling, you can just use the GMT hand for your local time and rely on the standard hour hand for your home time. This movement also has a 45-month battery life and a stated accuracy of -10 to +25 seconds per month. The 5mm push-pull crown is all high polish and signed with the Q. It's a bit small in both profile and diameter to easily operate the watch. Since this is a GMT and presumably you're traveling with it and changing the local time often, I would like to see a slightly bigger crown to help with this. The crystal is acrylic with a really lovely dome. It adds to the vintage feel, and there's something about an acrylic crystal that really adds charm to the watch overall. I also find watches with acrylic crystals are just more legible overall as well. The downside is they're very easy to scratch. However, it's also very easy to get the scratches back out with a little patience and some polywatch. The bezel is fairly slim and a bit hard to get purchase on, although the knurling does help. This is a friction bezel that will turn in both directions, absence of any clicks or tactile feedback. As the watch is a legitimate 4-hand GMT, a bidirectional bezel is preferred here as it adds to the functionality overall. The aluminum insert is beautiful, with a slightly muted red and blue with standard GMT markings. While ceramic bezels are nice and very resistant to scratching, it's difficult to get the same level of color and charm that you can achieve with an aluminum insert. The dial is a beautiful glossy black that has a very gentle curve to it. Around the edge of the dial is a dash for each of the minutes. We have minimal text with Q Timex at 12, GMT quartz at 6, and Swiss movement flanking the 6 o'clock index. Unlike the original Q Timex reissue, the indices on the GMT version are applied and edged in high polish finish. The lume in the indices is a bit chunky, which adds to its vintage feel. There's a triangle at 12 with large pentagons at 6 and 9. They chose to forgo an index at 3 and just left the date window, which is framed in white. Overall, I think the dial is really nicely laid out and incredibly legible. The hour and minute hands are flat, edged in high polish, and filled with lume. The second hand is a simple, straight, high polished stick with a small counterbalance. Unfortunately, the second hand registration is a bit off on this one, but that seems to be down to the luck of the draw. The GMT hand is long and high polish with a large red triangle at the end that is also filled with lume. All four hands are easily distinguishable and make for a very legible watch. The minute hand is nice and long, reaching to the dashes around the edge of the dial that designate the minutes. Unfortunately, Timex continues to struggle with lume. The lume here is somewhere between awful and decent, and this is a place where I'd like to see Timex improve in the future. And here is the watch on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. You can see this is going to be a great watch for smaller wrist sizes, and then it's quite thin and sits comfortably on the wrist as well. So pros and cons, starting with the pros. Well, this is a very fun, charming little watch. It's comfortable and practical with an accurate quartz movement and GMT function. While it isn't a true GMT with the jumping hour hand, either using the bezel or the GMT hand for your local time is a pretty quick solution for tracking a second time zone without resetting all of the hands on the watch. As for cons, I only have 2 major complaints and then a few minor ones. For the major complaints, the lume is very lackluster and I would like to see it improved. And then you only have 50 meters of water resistance. For an adventure-focused traveling GMT, I think the 50 meters of water resistance holds it back slightly for me. And then for minor complaints, I'd like to see a slightly bigger crown and a slightly more robust clasp, but these are pretty minor complaints at this price point. And then finally, I know some people are not going to like the use of the acrylic crystal, but I think it's a perfect choice for this watch. Finding a $200 quartz GMT is not easy, but a few good alternatives do spring to mind. First and foremost is the Citizen Nighthawk, although that watch does use a non-standard way to display a second time zone. Second is the Phoebus Eagle Ray GMT, and this actually also includes a sapphire crystal at $220. However, there's something undeniably charming about this Timex, and I think it is worth the price if you want to pick one up. Just make sure to wait until you can get one at MSRP. They're going to continue to make these, and I think they will be readily available if you're just a patient. So there you have it, the Timex Q, Timex GMT in 38mm. What do you think about this watch? Let me know in the comments below. As always, if you're enjoying the contents of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. That's all for this time. My name is Jason, and you've been watching Just Watches.